Hello everybody! Today we're here in Skagway, Alaska to ride the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad. We're really excited about this, so let's get right into it. To understand why there's even a railroad all the way up here in Skagway, a little historic context is in order. Let's check out the train we're about to take and talk some history. During the 19th century, North America had two notable gold rushes. The first was the California Gold Rush, beginning in 1848 and peaking around 1852. The hordes of people rushing to California for that gold rush are known as 49ers. But we're talking about the second notable gold rush, the Klondike Gold Rush that occurred between 1896 and 1899. The 100,000 or so people who rushed to the Klondike for this gold rush are known as stampeders. In 1896, three prospectors by the names of George Carmack, Skookum Jim, and Tagish Charlie — Tagish Charlie could also be known as Dawson Charlie — discovered gold along one of the Klondike's tributaries, and this was the triggering event that started the Klondike Gold Rush. At the time of the Klondike Gold Rush, there were two main trails to the Klondike goldfields: the Chilkoot Trail and the White Pass Trail. The Chilkoot Trail was higher, steeper, and the more treacherous of the two trails, but it was faster to the goldfields. The White Pass Trail was not as high or steep as the Chilkoot, but it was longer, so most prospectors continued to use the Chilkoot Trail simply because it was faster. Time was money after all. There were all sorts of schemes, scams, and cons associated to the Klondike Gold Rush aimed at parting stampeders, or anyone else for that matter, from their money. Enter George Brackett, who obtained the necessary right-of-way to build a road along the White Pass Trail from Skagway to the Canadian border. A nice road to the goldfield sounds helpful, right? Well, his scheme was to charge everyone who used his road a toll repeatedly along the way. As it turned out, the prospectors and various packing companies were having none of that, to put it mildly, and Brackett's road was subsequently sold to the newly formed White Pass and Yukon Railroad. The purpose of the railroad would be to facilitate the transportation of men and equipment from Skagway to the Klondike goldfields. So in 1898, the White Pass and Yukon Railroad Company was formed, and construction of the railroad itself began that same year. It was built as a narrow-gauge railroad because of the curves the train would have to negotiate and to cut down on construction costs. And as you might guess, there were many construction challenges. There were the steep grades of up to 3.9%. That's 3.9 feet of rise for every 100 feet of track. There was the challenging terrain, the blasting for the tunnels and just blasting along the way in general. Trestles and bridges needed to be built, not to mention the political negotiations of getting large-scale projects done. And they had to take all that on in the Alaskan weather. After all that, the railroad was completed in 1900, just 27 months after construction began, but also just as the Klondike Gold Rush was ending. The railroad did thrive, however, serving the mines after the gold rush. During World War II, it played a role in helping construct the Alcan, or Alaska Highway, by hauling workers and project materials. And it continued on as a working rail line, hauling ore down to Skagway until 1982. The railroad would take a hit in 1982 because in 1982 world metal prices fell and the mines closed or otherwise suspended operations, which in turn forced the White Pass and Yukon Railroad to cease its operations. It then reopened in 1988 as a tourist attraction, and that's pretty much where we stand today. Before we board, I just wanted to quickly orient you as to where we are in Skagway in relation to the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad. Here's a map of the Skagway waterfront. Skagway can accommodate 4 cruise ships, 2 at the railroad dock here on the right, 1 cruise ship at the Broadway dock, and 1 cruise ship at the Ore dock. Our cruise ship, the Norwegian Joy, is docked at the Ore dock, and we're going to catch the White Pass and Yukon Route train right next to the Ore dock here. The line to board the train is essentially right at the end of the dock. It can't be any more convenient than that. Here's an actual shot of how close we are. There's the Norwegian Joy right there in the foreground, tied up to the ore dock. The gangway that takes you from the Joy to the dock is right there, and right along the wall of that building, you might be able to see the track, is where the train is waiting, and you line up along those yellow retractable belt barriers to board. It really couldn't have been any easier. And just to give you an idea of where the train goes, here's a map of our route. After reaching the White Pass summit, we'll go around this loop right here and head back down towards Skagway.
Thank you.
The maps I've been showing you are included in a complimentary magazine called All Aboard that was included in our excursion. And by the way, this is the 125th year anniversary of the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad. Okay, let's get on board and settle in for our train ride up to the White Pass summit aboard the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad. Just after we leave the ore dock where we boarded, the train will make one quick stop at the depot to pick up passengers. It's only a couple of 100 yards from where we boarded, but then we'll get underway for good. The White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad has a length of about 100 miles running from Skagway to Whitehorse in the Yukon Territory. However, our ride today is a 20-ish mile ride from Skagway to the White Pass summit, which sits at a 2,888-foot elevation. So, all in all, a 40-ish mile narrated round trip that should take about 2.5 hours.
All our passengers that are 16 years and under need to be accompanied by a responsible adult when outside on those platforms. Our roaming guides today are Emily and Jeff, and if you haven't met them yet, you will very shortly. On your seats this morning, you should have all found complimentary copies of the All Aboard magazine. And coming up on our left will be the White Pass workshops.
Here's the White Pass and Yukon Railroad Maintenance Facility. This is a 20-acre facility where all the rolling stock maintenance is performed, and it also serves as a staging area for other general maintenance materials. The White Pass and Yukon Route Railway operates about 20 diesel-electric locomotives from various manufacturers, plus 2 Baldwin steam locomotives. They have about 79 passenger cars like the one we're riding in now, all named after rivers and lakes in the Yukon region. The passenger cars are a combination of authentic and reproductions. While we're on the topic of locomotives and rolling stock, let's talk for a minute about the locomotive pulling our 15-passenger coach train. As noted earlier, our locomotive today is a model E3000cc-DC diesel-electric locomotive manufactured by the National Railway Equipment Company headquartered in Mount Vernon, Illinois. There were 6 E3000cc DC 3-foot narrow-gauge locomotives delivered to the White Pass in Yukon in 2020, making them the newest locomotives in service to date. Our locomotive today is the number 3001. These locomotives have an AAR wheel arrangement classification designation of C-C, which means these locomotives have 2 identical trucks, each with 3 axles and each axle having its own traction motor. That's a lot of pulling power for a locomotive required to pull 15 passenger coaches up a grade that can reach 3.9%. You might not be able to see it here, but the Klondike Highway is right across the valley and basically runs parallel to the train route all the way to Whitehorse. While the White Pass and Yukon route ends at Whitehorse, the Klondike Highway continues past Whitehorse.
Those are known as sawtooth peaks and reach an elevation of around 7,000 feet. After you get a good shot of that, look forwards and to the left towards the mountain on the other side of the valley. In between the three leftmost peaks, you will see a soft bed of snow. That, folks, is the Cormac Glacier, and that's what feeds Bridalveil Falls, which we saw earlier back.
Oh, here's the trestle. Oh, here's the trestle bridge. Trestle.
Yes, it looked like we had the place. You want to go up there?
Just take a look at that. Oh, I got a bunch of stuff.
We've reached the White Pass summit. Our elevation here is 2,888 feet. And while we're going to loop around and head back down to Skagway, the White Pass and Yukon Route Railway does continue on down to its northern terminus in Whitehorse in the Yukon. We actually cross into Canada here for a bit, but because we don't disembark the train, no passport is required. Now we can say we've been to the Yukon Territory.
Now, even though the train may come to a stop, please remember there is no getting off the train at any point. Now, by now, you have met our...
If you must get across, please find and use the nearest crossing, and always look both ways before advancing. Thank you all so much for riding with us today on the White Pass and Yukon Railroad, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day here in Skagway.
We're going to get off the train here at the White Pass and Yukon Route Depot here in Skagway. This is the station the train stopped at just after we departed the ore dock where our ship, the Norwegian Joyous, docked earlier today. We could have taken this train right back to the ore dock where the ship is, but we got off here instead because we wanted to check out the depot, and we're also going to take a walk through Skagway and check out the town. Let's take a walk around the depot and see what's here. We'll check out the street side, the track side, and take a look around inside where there's a gift shop, a coffee counter, and a ticketing area with bathrooms. There's also a couple of static displays out front, including an old steam locomotive and rotary snowplow. Alright, that's going to do it for our White Pass and Yukon Route train ride experience. This train ride was a lot of fun. It was well organized, the train was clean and ran smoothly, and everything just went off without a hitch. The scenery was incredible, and the sense of history was so strong. It's hard to imagine people hiking the treacherous trails up to the White Pass summit and beyond with hundreds or thousands of pounds of equipment in tow in hopes of striking it rich prior to this railroad being built. This excursion is definitely well worth the price and your time. Highly recommended. Well, we're off now to explore the rest of Skagway and then make our way back to the ship. We'll see you in the next video.